So we'll do the word for word. Patim, her husband, Prayanan, Praya Antam, while leaving home, Subhalasya of King Subala, Putri, the worthy daughter, Pativrata, devoted to her husband, Cha also, Anuja Gama, followed Sadvi the chaste, Himalayan, toward the Himalayan mountains, Nyasta Danda, one who has accepted the rod of renounced order, Praharasam, the object of delight, Manashivanam, of the great fighters, Eva like Sat, legitimate, Samprahara, good lashing. Translation by Sri Prabhupada Ki Jai. The gentle, the gentle and chaste Gandhari, who was the daughter of King Subal of Kandahar or Gandhar, followed her husband, seeing that he was going up to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delight of those who have accepted the staff of the renounced order like fighters who have accepted good lashing from the enemy. Purport. Sabalani, or Gandhari, daughter of King Subal and the wife of King Tirthash, was ideal as a wife, devoted to her husband. The Vedic civilization especially prepares chaste and devoted wives, of whom Gandhari is one amongst many mentioned in history. Lakshmi ji, Sita Devi, was also a daughter of a great king, but she followed her husband Lord Ramachandra into the forest. Similarly, as a woman, Gandhari could have remained at home or at her father's house, but as a chaste and gentle lady, she followed her husband without consideration. Instructions for the renounced order of life were imparted to Dhritarashtra by Vidurji, and Gandhari was at the side of her husband. But he did not ask her to follow him because he was at that time fully determined, like a great warrior who faces all kinds of dangers in the battlefield. He was no longer attracted to so-called wife or relatives, and he decided to start alone. But just as a chaste lady, Gandhari decided to follow her husband to the last moment. Maharaja accepted the order of Varnaprasth, and at this stage the wife is allowed to remain as a voluntary servitor. But in the sannyas stage, no wife can stay with her former husband. A sannyasi is considered to be a dead man civilly, and therefore the wife becomes a civil widow without connection with her former husband. Maharaja did not deny his faithful wife, and she followed her husband at her own risk. The sannyasis accept a rod as a sign of the renounced order of life. There are two types of sannyasis: those who follow the Mayavadi philosophy held by Sripad Shankaracharya accept only one rod, but those who follow the Ekadanda. But those who follow the Vaishnavite philosophy accept three combined rods, three danda. The Mayavadi sannyasis are Ekadanda Swamis, where the Vaishnava sannyasis are known as Tridandi sannyasis, or more distinctly, Tridandi Goswamis. In order to be distinguished from the Mayavadi philosophers, the Ekadandi Swamis are mostly found at the Himalayas, but the Vaishnava sannyasis are found at Vrindavan and Puri. The Vaishnava sannyasis are Narottamas, whereas the Mayavadi sannyasis are Dhiras. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was advised to follow the Dhiras because at that stage it was difficult for him to become a Narottama. The gentle and chaste Gandhari, who was the daughter of King Subal of Kandahar or Gandhar, followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delight of those who have accepted the staff of renounced order, like fighters who have accepted a good lashing from the enemy. Om Agyantamradamsya Jananjana Shlakaya Chakshuram Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. So we saw in the prior verse that Bhante Prabhu did pretty week that it described how Maharaj Dhritarashtra, even though he was attached very strongly to the politics of the kingdom of Hastinapur, and also familial attachment, he tried to do everything to maintain his worldly successes, but unfortunately, he encountered frustration from beginning, Shilpa says, from the beginning to the end of his material activities. So something we see in the Bhagavad Gita, a kind of fundamental lesson is that we have expectations, and if the expectations are unfulfilled, then it results in disturbance to the mind, and eventually anger sprouts out. So we have to be very careful about where our attachments are in this life, because the nature of the material world is raga dvesh, meaning desire and dislike. And the solution throughout the Gita to this fundamental principle of raga and dvesh is tolerance. Like tolerance of the dualities of life are most important. And the tolerance can only occur when one has attachment to something permanent. It's like a boat that's floating in the waves of the ocean, and the boat's going here and there. But if the boat has an anchor or is tied to the pier, the shore, to some steady point in the shore, then the boat won't get lost in the ocean of material existence. So one time I was reading His Holiness Giriraj Swami was recounting, was speaking at his ashram in California. And at that time, he was also being visited by His Holiness Niranjana Swami, a wonderful Vaishnava who predominantly serves in Russia, but also comes every now and then, fortunately, to the US, primarily in the East Coast. Anyways, they're obviously close friends, being sincere disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And am I audible with like the Madhava Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, you're audible.
Okay. Yeah, the voice is just not there. So Giriraj Swami gave a lecture at his ashram, and then he publicly apologized to Niranjana Swami, saying, "I'm sorry, Maharaj, we did not serve you as nicely as we can and should have done." And Maharaj being, the ultimate, Niranjana Swami being such a Vaishnava, he said, I had no expectations. And since I had no expectations, where is there a question of, serving me, not necessarily serving me, in other ways. So Maharaj wasn't, what he was trying to point out is that having material expectations of fame and honor, you recognition versus non-recognition, these are simply material, attachments. They're not spiritual based. So, and that's a lesson for Arjun that Lord Krishna clarified, that don't put your attachment on the assessment of one's identity as a body, material body, but place your attachments based on assessment of yourself as a spirit soul, and that all these rajas and rishis are also likewise. So, but in any event, the Dasa encountered a lot of difficulties in his life and frustrations. But in spite of that seeming disqualification, he achieved, Srila Prabhupada mentions in Proverbs, great success by the instructions of Vidurji. So the fundamental instruction in this chapter is that one should try to associate with sadhu, and by doing that, one can develop attachment to spirit or to Bhagwan and disrupt one's connection to temporary material shelters. So this verse talks about, the previous verses were about Vidurji and Dhritarashtra. So because the relationship between Vidurji and Dhritarashtra was so strong, a bond of not just family connection, but Vidurji was the advisor of Dhritarashtra. And Vidurji did have, in spite of his own personal self-detachment, he had great love for his brother. And I think it's evident that his brother reciprocated with that love. So, I think a nice instruction here is that one encounters challenges in relationships, that one should render selflessly of oneself to others. Love that's not necessarily reciprocated, because there was such a long time that Vidurji's affection and advice was neglected by Dhritarashtra. And eventually it hurt Dhritarashtra. It didn't, hurt Vidurji in his quest. And in fact, that rejection by Dhritarashtra allowed Vidurji to subsequently, travel as a pilgrim and have association with the Sadhu Maitreya Rishi. So Lord always has big plans that we're not aware of in our limited vision. So, so here, with attachment to Vidurji, the Dhritarashtra was able to leave aside his kingdom, which was not anyways ruled by, the Pandavas, specifically Yudhishthira Maharaj, and his possessions as a, retired king, and his servants. I'm sure he had many, many servants, and even his wife, who was very wonderful. So, that was an amazing transformation of the heart. Now, like Srila Prabhupada mentions, that Dhritarashtra was not, um, the usual journey of a devotee is from Shraddha to Prem, but Dhritarashtra's was not based on Prem. Dhritarashtra, as we'll see later on in the chapter, and the commentary of the acharyas, is oftentimes described as an Ashtanga yogi at this stage in his life, not somebody who's immersed in Prem. But Vidurji's instructions created some detachment with Dhritarashtra, and so therefore he was able to let go of his attachments. So Srila Prabhupada talks about Gandhari in this verse quite a bit and glorifies her. So, so in the Mahabharata, she's described as a very pious and virtuous soul. And also, it is implied that she is an incarnation of the goddess of wisdom. Srila Prabhupada describes here that she was actually born in Gandhar. Gandhar, and Gandhar, as you all know, is same as Kandahar, in what current day Afghanistan. So it tells us how, there was connections. There wasn't like separate little countries like India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. They were just regions. And but there was communication between the different princely Kshatriya families and the rishis, etc. And it was a cultured place. It wasn't just like, what we see now. Due to the influence of time, look at what's happening in Afghanistan. But it wasn't like that. There was Vaishnava culture there. So, so she was born as the daughter of Subala, who was a king of Gandhar. And so she was called Gandhari. Gandhari. There are other words used for her here. You can see that, so the verse says Subalasya Putri. So the Subala is her father, and Putri means the worthy daughter. So Gandhari, during her premarital days, there are different points that are made in Mahabharata, but basically it was felt that she was, uh, her wisdom and her qualities attracted Lord Shiva's mercy, because she was a very pious and austere personality even before her her marriage. She was given uh, a boon that she could bear 100 children. Somewhere it says 101 in some other translation, but 100 children. And the reason, Mahabharata doesn't explain the reason why she got this particular boon out of all of the boons. but ultimately, her marriage was, as you all know, was arranged by Bhishma Dev. And the reason that he picked her for into Mahabharata to be the wife of Dhritarashtra was because she was going to be the eldest wife, amongst the three brothers, uh, Pandu and Vidurji and Dhritarashtra. And so uh, Bhishma Dev had made a promise to his father uh, that he would remain celibate, meaning uh, never get married, and also secondly made a vow. He was required to make a vow. It wasn't just enough to be celibate. He had to commit that he was going to support whoever is sitting on the throne of Hastinapur. So sometimes we see that, it's said that Bhishma Dev was being provided for by the king of Hastinapur, but when you think about it, he's a Mahajan. He's capable of conquering all the kingdoms for his own personal benefit. So it wasn't, some selfish motive of being given his daily, rice and dal, it and shelter of his roof. He's a tremendously capable uh, prince and Kshatriya who who was able to withstand Parusharam, his spiritual master, and so he's capable personality. No, he took a vow, and so he was chaste, meaning he followed his statement that whoever was the king in Hastinapur, he would support that person, and that was because of his love for his father and the second mother that he had. So Bhishma Pitama, being very wise, f figuring that one son may die, but if some lady is granted a boon by Shivji to be able to bear 100 children, then he picked her to be uh, the wife of the Dhritarashtra. And so Bhishma Dev arranged for this, and Mahabharata talks about uh, her qualities. And when she found out who she was going to be married to, she decided to blindfold herself so that she could be like her husband. Now, this is a sign of tremendous renunciation, dedication, and love. There are very few life partners, be it husband or wife, that would put themselves in a similar setting as their loved one. And you know, background in this, it gets a little bit more challenging because uh, her brother, her elder brother, his name was Shakuni, uh, and Mahabharata describes in the past there was a war between Hastinapur and Gandhar, and Gandhar's kingdom lost, and all of Shakuni's other brothers were killed. And so Mahabharata sometimes implies that Shakuni also, uh, in kind of an act of revenge, would offer, his sister to the blind king, Dhritarashtra, and in that way destroy, in a manipulative, insidious, subtle manner that Dhritarashtra would not understand, but would destroy the the Kauravas. And he was, as we know, very vital in kind of fanning the sparks of distrust that existed between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So, everything's kind of connected in Mahabharata to familial tradition and past wrongdoings and future acts of revenge, etc. It was kind of, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, like that sort of situation. all sorts of material, calculations. But eventually, Gandhari does get married to Dhritarashtra, and she carries her child, the child that she has, according to Mahabharata, for 2 years. And unfortunately, and during that 2 year, um, um, Kunti Maharani already had a child, Yudhishthira. And so she became upset, this kind of competitive spirit we have to guard against, because this this desire for recognition, pratishtha, Sri Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains in Madhura Kadamani that this is a very insidious and subtle desire that devotees can have. This desire for fame and recognition for devotional activities or for other things can destroy one's bhakti because it creates false temporary attachments. And Krishna will correct them, for our own purification. But she became upset, Gandhari, that Kunti Maharani already had a child while she herself was holding on to her child for reasons that she did not realize for 2 years. So, so Mahabharata explains that she hit her tummy, where the womb was, her pregnancy was located, because she was basically frustrated, helpless, and angry that, as the eldest wife, she should have given birth to the heir for the kingdom, the next prince. And as a result, her birth did not result in, the birth of her son or 100 sons. Instead, she had, Maharaj describes that she had like basically a gray mass of tissue that kind of came out of her body rather than a child. So Vyasadeva decided to divide this gray mass into 100. Some interpretation of Mahabharata say 101. 101 would be the 100 sons, and then there was one daughter. But regardless, not much is said about her. But the children were, this mass was divided into many pieces, and the first to be born was Duryodhan. And according to Mahabharata, subsequently there were 99 brothers and one sister, Dushala. But not much is mentioned about Dushala in the itihasas or the histories. So that's how her sons appeared. And coming back to this, so a little bit, that was just a little bit about background of who Gandhari was. She was considered an incarnation of the goddess of wisdom, and the manipulation that occurred in that kingdom before her marriage by Shakuni, who encouraged the marriage because he was trying to, take advantage of and become the counselor for Dhritarashtra by arranging the marriage of his sister to Dhritarashtra as a means of getting revenge on the kingdom of Hastinapur for humiliating his father, Subal of Kandahar or Gandhar, and how Gandhari received a boon from Shivji to have 100 children, and how Bhishma Dev purposely took her as desired her for the wife of Dhritarashtra because of ability to have 100 sons, because understanding very wisely that the kingdom needs an heir prince to take over. He was worried that if there was just one child may not survive, etc. And then how she gets frustrated that the pregnancy didn't bear fruit for 2 years, and then something that did not look like a child came out, and Vyasadeva subdivided that into 101 pieces. So, um, so it's very interesting that Gandhari is oftentimes portrayed in a very positive light, where the Tashta and her sons portrayed in a negative, kind of almost like uh, the villains in Mahabharata, horrorless. She, Mahabharata indicates that she always encouraged her sons to follow Dharma and make peace with the Pandavas. And oftentimes it's said that Duryodhana would ask his mother for blessings during the Kurukshetra war, and Gandhari would only say, "May victory find the side of righteousness." May victory find the side of righteousness, not that, okay, my dear sons, may you be victorious. So, the problem here was that even though she was a very dharmic lady and very chaste, determined soul, she had a flaw, and her flaw was the love of her 100 sons, especially Duryodhana. So, she there's so many analogies in Mahabharata and in our scriptures about blindness, how material blindness can indicate a spiritual blindness. So that was, a flaw in Gandhari's character, that her love for her children was so intense that she was blinded to their weaknesses of heart. And so oftentimes a moral that comes out in Mahabharata is that Duryodhana's behavior is that partially the way he is because he has blind parents. And Mahabharata says this, that one blind parent is Dhritarashtra, meaning one who cannot see. And the other blind parent is Gandhari, meaning one who does not want to see. So Dhritarashtra was physically blind, and Gandhari purposely put, a blinder on of cloth over her eyes because she did not want to see. She did not want to see the flaws of her husband and of her 100 sons. So, a very nice word here is this word pati vrataha. Pati vrataha. And one who's determined. Vrat means determination. Or specifically here, Srila Prabhupada says, one who's devoted to her husband. So that's one adjective that's used to describe her. And the other is sadhvi, the chaste. Hmm. And then Srila Prabhupada. So those are two wonderful qualities of a wife. Devotion to her husband, because the husband in those days was viewed as a representative of God. And it's not, kind of like a gender-based discrimination where the woman is a slave of the husband sort of thing, but the husband was supposed to be of ideal character, and the wife was also supposed to be of such ideal character. And sati meaning chaste, meaning she was sincere. So Srila Prabhupada here compares her to Sita Devi. He calls Sita Devi Lakshmi Ji. Sita Devi was also a daughter of a great king, but she followed her husband Lord Ramchandra into the forest. Similarly, as a woman, Gandhari could have remained at her home or her father's house, but as a chaste and gentle lady, she followed her husband without consideration. So even though Gandhari had great material vision and wisdom, she electively decided to cover up her eyes. So she voluntarily blindfolded herself for the rest of her eyes, for the rest of her life, even though she had good eyesight from birth. Mm. So, she's oftentimes considered as a very, Smash talks about chastity and renunciation and devotion. We read this, over a year ago. So here, this is in prior chapter, Canto 9. I'm sorry, Canto 1, Chapter 9. Maharaj Yudhishthira at once went to his capital, Hastinapur, accompanied by Lord Sri Krishna. There he consoled his uncle and aunt, Gandhari, who was an ascetic. So here, Vyasdev calls her a tapasveen, an ascetic lady. Even though she was married, she was a tapasvi. Vyasdev himself says that. So not only was she, pativrata, devoted to her husband and chaste, but she was a tapasvi. And here Srila Prabhupada says, Gandhari was a very powerful ascetic. Although she was living the life of a faithful wife and a kind mother, it is said that Gandhari also voluntarily blindfolded her eyes because of the blindness of her husband. A wife's duty is to follow the husband 100%. And Gandhari was so true to her husband that she followed him even in his perpetual blindness. Therefore, in her actions, she was a great ascetic. In actions, meaning it's not just yan, but it's vigyan. And realization comes through an activity, specifically bhakti. But in this case, she was endowed with great renunciation. Besides that, the shock she suffered because the wholesale killing of her 100 sons and her grandsons was also certainly too much for a woman. But she suffered all this just like an ascetic. And here Srila Prabhupada compares her to Bhishma Dev. Gandhari, although a woman, is no less than Bhishma Dev in character. They're both remarkable personalities in Mahabharata. So we should not just, I think almost everybody who's heard Mahabharata has understood her great qualities as great love for her husband, but also, here it's talking about her having the power of being an ascetic, right? So instructions for renounced order of life were imparted to Dhritarashtra by Vidurji, and Gandhari was by the side of her husband, but he did not ask her to follow him because he was at that time himself fully determined, like a great warrior who faces all kinds of dangers in the battlefield. So this is connecting to this samprahaha, this idea of sampraha in Sanskrit. Sampratha uh, uh, is the idea here is that sampraha means conflict or battle. Sampraha, which is the example is of one whose joy, whose sufferings are, viewed not as sufferings but as a joyous event. So good lashing. So it's talking, it's talking about this like a good, a warrior experiencing a good battle. So, that's the idea that's being compared here. That Dhritarashtra accepted the order of Vanaprastha, and he allowed his wife to remain as a voluntary servitor. So, after the death of his children, Dhritarashtra stepped down as a king. And essentially, he was in Vanaprastha, although in the palace of Hastinapur, with his wife, who remained with him voluntarily, because Vanaprastha, one can remain as a couple. But when one comes to sannyas level, then a wife cannot stay with her husband. And therefore, the wife, what Srila Prabhupada means about the wife becomes a civil widow, meaning that her connection with her husband in terms of support is not there. And so at that point, she becomes a ward of the state, meaning the nation, the city, the government takes care of her, just like, Social Security sort of thing. So, so in reality, she did not have to go with the Tashta to the Himalayas. The Himalayas are symbolism of renunciation. Going to the north is symbolization of renunciation. Narad Muni does it, etc. Dhruva does it. So that's what it's symbolizing. So Prabhupada talks about how she could have gone back to her father's home in Kandahar. She could have stayed back in the royal household. I mean, Yudhishthira Maharaj loved her like his own mother. Uh, you know, she could have said, "I've lost my children and my kingdom, um, but my nephews, the Pandavas, are taking care of me. So why should I go to the north?" So, but she was chaste, right? Here it's indicated she was sadhvi. She was sadhvi, and she was prativrata. Wherever the Dasa went, whether it's been in the forest or in the palace, she would simply follow him and try to serve him. Srila Prabhupada equated that to an ascetic, a renunciate, voluntary acceptance of suffering. She voluntarily accepted these, miserable conditions, if you can imagine, what she had faced in her life. So you can see how she is a great Vyasdeva, tapasvi, a renounced lady. And then the second half of this purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about, expands on this idea of sannyas. As we know, Lord Krishna explains in chapter 18 that sannyas and tyag are of one and the same thing. They're not different. In external dress, they may be different, but in the consciousness, they're the same. And Lord Krishna explains in the first 19 verses in chapter 18 that similarity, essentially stating that the similarity is that both a sannyasi, and a tyagi, they have similar quality, which is they're not attached to the results of the activities, or what Srila Prabhupada refers to as the fruits of one's activities, nor are they under this influence of thinking I'm the doer. That false ego is diminished in that position of a tyagi or sannyasi. So, you know, that comes into play here because she's renouncing and the Dasa are renouncing their attachment to the kingdom and to their other relatives. So Srila Prabhupada goes on and saying there are two types of sannyasis: those who follow the Mayavadi philosophy headed by Sripad Shankaracharya, who accept only one rod, Ekadanda, but those who follow the Vaishnava philosophy accept three rods. The Mayavadi sannyasis are Ekadandi Swamis, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis are known as Tridandi Swamis, or more distinctly, Tridandi Goswamis, in order to be distinguished from the Mayavadi philosophers. So this idea of Ekadandi and Tridandi, Srila Prabhupada discusses in Chaitanya Charitamrita as well as in Bhagavatam. So there's this chapter 6 in Canto 3 about the universal form, where Maitreya Rishi is explaining to Vidurji about the universal form, the Virat Rup. But there's a relevant verse here where he says to Maitreya Rishi says to Vidurji, in spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear from the spiritual master and whatever I could assimilate, I'm now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech, for otherwise my power of speaking would remain unchaste. Asati. Hmm. Purification of a conditioned soul necessitates purification of his or her consciousness. Right. So Cheta Darpanam means purification not of the external body, but of the soul, the consciousness. By the presence of consciousness, the transcendental soul is verified, right? The symptom of the presence of soul is consciousness. When the soul departs, the consciousness also departs, and therefore the material body cannot act. So that's why when we see a person who's passed away, we say, oh, she has passed away, or he has passed away. What have they passed away? The soul has left the body. So consciousness cannot be silent even for a moment. When the body does not act, consciousness acts in the form of dreams. So here, Maitreya is talking about unchaste consciousness. So in order to avoid unchaste consciousness, he is trying to describe the glories of the Lord, although he did not have the ability to describe them perfectly. Srila Prabhupada said, this glorification is not of research, but it's of hearing submissively from the authority of spiritual master. And you can see that's what Tathagata did. He heard, even though of a lot of pain that he felt from the death of his children and loss of the kingdom and frustration of his plans, he did uh, he did hear very nicely from his brother finally, and he heard them submissively. In the Bhagavatam or Mahabharata, it doesn't tell him at this stage in his life that he voiced great displeasure that, oh Vidur, how have you insulted me? I'm your elder brother. I'm the king. I was the king, and you left me alone to suffer the loss of my children. And who are you to tell me what to do? So, that's a good quality that he heard without prejudice. So, Srila Prabhupada says, it does not matter whether the one's Lord's glories are fully explained or not. One must attempt to engage one's bodily, mental, and verbal activities in the transcendental glorification of the Lord. Otherwise, such activities will remain unchaste and impure. So, um, so Srila Prabhupada explains in the next section that the nature of one's soul is not necessarily visible to others or even to our own selves. Rather, it is made visible by activities on the verbal, meaning the mouth, the mental, the mind, and one's body. What does one doing with that? So whether one is conditioned or not conditioned can be verified by looking at that. So here Srila Prabhupada says the three Dandi sannyasis accept three rods representing the vow to engage in the service of the body, mind, and speech. So this thing where Srila Prabhupada says those who follow Vaishnava philosophy accept three rods, three danda. And Srila Prabhupada goes on to say the eka, so eka is one, and dandi means stick. Eka dandi sannyasis take the vow to become one with the Supreme. And you see, Srila Prabhupada says kind of the same thing. Notice here, since the Lord is absolute, there's no distinction between him and his glories. You can see here, Srila Prabhupada also implies the same idea here, talking about the difference between the Tridandi and the Mayavadi sannyasis. But he explores it more here. The glories of the Lord, as chanted by Vaishnava sannyasis, are as substantial as the Lord himself. And thus, while glorifying the Lord, the devotee becomes one with him in transcendental interest, although he remains a servitor. This is a chinta bheda bheda tattva, simultaneously one in different position of the devotee makes him purified. And thus his life becomes a complete success. So why do you think that Srila Prabhupada kind of emphasizes the importance of Ekadanda sannyasis versus the three Dandi sannyasis versus the Ekadanda sannyasis? So the idea here is, as followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the highest emblem of love for Bhagavan, by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal example and by his explanations to Sri Sanatana Rupa Goswami, is one who experiences Bhakti Rasa, is the most elevated jiva in entire creation. And so, this Rupa Goswami explores this concept, obviously in depth, of rasa in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu talks about rasa at a very high level. I'll describe it as a permanent emotion being experienced. It's not transitory that at one minute I have this tremendous type of love for Bhagwan, and next minute I have tremendous type of love for my children or my family or my work or my country or my position, etc., etc. So as the kind of the three principles that are indicated in Sri Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu in the southern section, the second part, the explorative rasa theory, is that one has to have three, rasa can be analyzed by three aspects, and the need for three aspects, which is one is mamatam, and Haripasha Prabhu explored this in his lectures, the first two lectures. Mamatwan is a sense of possessiveness. The Lord is mine. The Lord is mine. Because in a relationship, one has to have that sense. The other person is mine, mamatvam. And yet, the second concept that Sri Rupa Goswami describes as this idea of individuality has to remain there. The idea of individuality has to be there as well. Why? Because if there's no individuality, there's no rasa, there's no relationship. So one has to have a sense of possessiveness, like Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, the gopis, Subal, Sridham, Madhumangal Prabhu, etc. So sometimes acharyas feel that the Santa rasa is not a true rasa. That because there's in Shanta rasa, there's not the sense of possessiveness, mamatvam, nor is there a sense of one's individuality. So those personalities who don't relish those two aspects of mamatvam or individuality, they become ekadanda sannyasis because they're trying to, uh, experience the absolute truth. Now, it doesn't become, according to Bhagavatam, if you want to read Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 30 onwards, where it talks about the three types of realization of the absolute, Brahmeti, Prameti, Bhagavaneti. It glorifies those that are Vadis. It glorifies them, it doesn't criticize them. Because becoming one means one in quality, right? One in quality. Like Dhritarashtra, or Vidurji become one with Krishna, not in terms of being Krishna, but acquiring the qualities. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur comments on this in chapter 18 of Gita, saying it's like a person entering a city, like a wanderer. Somebody's wandering the earth, comes into a city, doesn't mean that they become the city. They become one with the city and that they come into the city. So likewise, becoming one with Brahman realization, or this position where there's no mamatvam and no individuality, does not mean one becomes, there's, a kind of a loss of identity, because even a drop of water in an ocean still remains a drop of the water, but it attains the qualities of the ocean. So, so it become so. I mentioned that I mentioned the first two qualities of what one needs to have rasa, a relationship, is the sense of mamatvam, possessiveness, the sense of individuality, and then the third thing that's needed is a distinction that's being made by Rupa Goswami of Aishwarya versus Madhurya. So Aishwarya means looking at the Lord in terms of His majesty. Certainly that exists in Bhagavatam, without doubt. Bhagavan is described in a very majestic manner. But Sri Rupa Goswami says that rather than that being the predominant mood, it needs to be the mood of like Madhurya or Vatsalya. Madhurya is just the extreme in terms of possessiveness. Whereas Vatsalya is different, but they're both prem. They're both prem. They're not under the influence. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains in Srimad Bhagavatam that Brahmaji explained to Bhumi Devi and the Devatas that along with the demigods and the Devis appearing, the third thing instruction he gives of appearance is that the Lord's energy, Maya, will also appear, both as Maha Maya as well as Yoga Maya. And that Maha Maya will be known by its ability to bewilder certain people like Kamsa, Shishupal, etc. That's why when they saw Bhagwan, they did not see him in the supreme loving form. They saw him as an antagonistic personality. So that was the influence of Mahamaya. And then he says, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in Sardarshi Tika in Canto 10 says that the devotees are bewildered by Yogamaya. But then he says, because Yogamaya is a manifestation of Krishna's Swarup Shakti, whereas Mahamaya is, is Bahir Anga Shakti. It's an external energy. But then he says that the activities of Lord Krishna's associates is not under the influence of Mahamaya or Yogamaya, rather it is Prem Bhakti. And he says the quality of Prem Bhakti is a twofold. One is extreme thirst to have that relationship with Krishna and a sense of tremendous possessiveness of Krishna. So the idea here is that the three Dandi sannyasis are wanting a rasa, they're wanting an exchange with the Lord. And they're trying to do that in the form of the body, mind, and speech. So they have the three Dandis. And so that's why Srila Prabhupada talks about simultaneously one and different position of the devotee. So there is oneness in quality, but one maintains mamatvam, the sense of possessiveness and individuality, yet one views the Lord with sweetness. So that's how I understand this section. And the Mayavadi sannyasis are Ekadanda Swamis, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis are Tridanda Swamis. To distinguish the two, the Ekadanda Swamis are mostly fond of the Himalayas. So later on in the chapter, when it describes Vidurji leaving for the Himalayan mountains, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Prabhupada explain that Vidurji engages in the process of Astanga yoga, the eightfold process of purification. And that's why he burns at the end with the potency of Astanga yogi. So the Acharyas explain that with And Dhritarashtra did not develop prem bhakti. It was that of an Astanga yogi, that mood of samadhi and renunciation and becoming, in that spirit rather than a spirit of prem bhakti. Okay. So clearly, Srila Prabhupada kind of puts a gradation that the Vaishnava sannyasis are Narottama. So Narottama, Nara means human, Uttama means the greatest. And the Mayavadis are Dhiras. Dhiras are the sober, detached, determined personalities. Because difficult at Thasha stage to become a Narottama, meaning one who can develop Prem Bhakti. So once again, the translation, the gentle and chaste Gandhari, was daughter of King Subal Kandada. Gandhar followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalayas, which are the delight of those who accepted the staff of renounced order like fighters who've accepted a good lashing from the enemy. I'm sorry I went late. I got lost in the discussion, so forgive me. It's 9:12. Any realizations, or I'm sorry, any further discussion?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for the wonderful explanations, as always. Especially, I liked the glorification of Gandhari.
Yeah.
Actually, my heart melted, to hear about her, how much sacrifice she did, right? So, no, she tolerated actually so much in her life, being, blindfolded herself voluntarily and losing all her sons and etc. So everything what you shared is really, really relishable about Gandhari Prabhuji. So it was very nice to hear about the glorification of Gandhari. And also, thank you so much for explaining about Ekadanda and Tridanda Sannyasi concept, what Srila Prabhupada explained. And I like the aspect of you taking us to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is my favorite. And you kindly mentioned about the three things like, Mamatva, first of all, that feeling that Krishna belongs to us. And also how we have to maintain our individuality, the second point. And also the third, like, Aishwarya versus Madhurya. And so first these three things should be there to in order to have a rasa with the Lord. And so it was very nice to hear those things from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Prabhuji. I really got attracted to that. And also, finally, you said, the Tridandi sannyasas, they do serve with the manasa, vacha, karmana, like the mind, body, and words to the Lord, to for the aspiration of this rasa with the Supreme Lord, right? That's what they are called as Tridandi. And so, thank you so much for all these sharings, Prabhu. I'm so happy to hear. I really relished it, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for summarizing precisely. I like where in Chaitanya Charitamrita it says eloquence is the truth spoken concisely. So thank you for honoring the words of the acharyas. Any other discussion points of discussion?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much for narrating Mayavadi, Ekadanda, and Tridanda. It is very important to know, but nobody knows, I think, nowadays. Not nobody, but most of the people did not know that, I think. And thank you very much for explaining how to do Krishna individual. Krishna is always behind us, and we have to go Krishna only. We did not know all things. That is my concern, Prabhuji. It is anything is wrong. Please forgive me. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. No, I don't see a wrong in what you said. Okay, so should we go ahead and end at this point, or any other point of discussion? Or does somebody want to add something?
Krishna Prabhu, Radhakund Mataji already summarized like very well the wonderful points what you highlighted. Especially you mentioned about this verse, definitely about Gandhari's devotion and the qualities of an ideal wife following husband's path. And thank you for covering wonderful points about the symbolism of the rod, like Ekadanda and Tridanda. And thanks for quoting that example or the reference between or the conversation between Giriraj Swami and Niranjan Swami about the expectations. That's a learning lesson. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's very nice to observe great devotees and their love that comes out of their their relationships. What's in the heart comes out. Okay. All right. Anything else? So for today, well, thank you very much for joining. Thank you for staying later. I think I went longer, partially because it started later, everything going on. And also, I think I went longer because I went alongside branches of the main topics that Srila Prabhupada explored, but hopefully it was meaningful and helpful. So today, we were going to go to 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Kirtan program, but due to the passing away of Karunamai Mataji, Prabhu's good mother, yesterday, things, we had to do some modifications. So her funeral service will be between 2 to 4 p.m. I sent in the WhatsApp link. Did you all receive the WhatsApp link of where to go if you desire to come and observe her departure?
Yes, Prabhu. Devotees who are part of that ISKCON Portland Volunteers group might have already received. Yes.
Okay. So, and if any of you think there's a different group I should be posting to you, or we can post it, you can simply take my post and put it into another group. Yesterday there was a lot of logistical stuff that we were trying to do, modifications, alterations, etc., to do the needful for today, to both have, Hari Kirtan as well as, observance. Radhakund Mataji, I don't know if you guys live so far, but if you can come, I think you would like. I know Shrikar couldn't come because of work obligations, but I think he would be happy if you could come and participate in the kirtan. It was live streamed through YouTube, and I think it's in the YouTube recording. But hearing in person, there's just, I
Yes.
mean, Hariparsha Prabhu, and since a lot of devotees have attraction for Hariparsha Prabhu's instruction, if you look back at his Facebook posting from 2020, he posted a kirtan that Kirtan Premi Prabhu was doing. It was like a 90-second clip, and Kirtan Premi Prabhu was singing, and devotees are like, dancing like wild people. And he said, "This is Vaishnava Sangha, not Facebook or Zoom. The Vaishnava Sangha is, the emperor of all sadhanas is Kirtan. The emperor of all sadhanas is Kirtan."
Yes, Prabhu, today we have planned to come today, and program is shortened, unfortunately, but we are going to be there, Prabhu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's very nice, and he's engaging the youth very nicely, and those that like to chant, to do kirtan, where they do a little bit of kirtan too. So, so it'll be nice. And tomorrow there'll be the final program just before he leaves the city for back for Florida. So, okay, so I think, thank you, dear devotees, for joining. Narottam Prabhu, I hope somehow you feel better soon. Sorry about you not feeling well. Okay, see you at around 11. Like the Prabhu, you'll be there. I know you did a lot of services yesterday too.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You'll be at the temple for the lives, for the streaming and the audio visual, right?
Yes, Prabhu. I'll be there by 11.
Okay, so we'll try to do that. By the time we got home, etc., it was pretty late. at night as well. So, but I think Prabhuji will be ready. Okay, take care. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna. So we'll end Narottam